Chapter 25 of A Superfluous Woman by Emma Frances Brooke. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Bruce Peary. Dr. Cornerstone had moved his place of residence. He had left Bloomsbury and taken a house in the district of West St. Pancras, not far from Regent's Park. Here he could give his wife and children the advantage of a beautiful open space, green trees, and some picturesqueness, and yet not be too far from the centre of things, that being, in his eyes, the East End. In West St. Pancras, close to and yet isolated from the main thoroughfares with their noise and traffic, one comes on the unexpected oasis of a quiet street, of a little nest of pleasant detached houses, each with its own bright garden. In this street Dr. Cornerstone had settled himself with his wife and children. He had selected it because the atmosphere was bright and healthy, and this he knew to be essential to proper development and happy existence. Dr. Cornerstone had no mind to embrace in his own person, and in those nearest to him, the misery from which he daily saw others suffering. He preferred to maintain a high, though simple, standard of comfort, and he would no more have attempted to improve and assist a suffering world by adopting in his own person any portion of the scandalous poverty and degradation inflicted upon the struggling hordes of the workers, than he would have tried to save it by assuming the wicked luxury and degradation of the superfluous rich. He regarded it as his first duty, as it is indeed that of every responsible citizen, to keep himself and those whose well-being depended upon him sane in body and mind. The pursuit of wholeness was the aim by which he determined his daily personal conduct. His second duty was the work which he had cut out for himself in life, and that was the rescue of others from the high misdemeanors consequent upon either poverty or wealth. That work occupied all his time and energies. Dr. Cornerstone's practice had increased, and as it included the rich as well as the poor, he found himself in a position to give more and more of his advice gratis where it was most needed. His name had become a well-known one, so that the idle rich would appeal to him when, beaten by the diseases that follow in the train of ennui, excess, and self-indulgence, the human nature within them revolted against its own sickliness and yearned for a tonic. This the caustic tone of the uncompromising doctor was sure to present, for his habit was the commingling of heart-searching advice with medicinal prescription. To sick women among the rich, Dr. Cornerstone habitually mingled mercy and tenderness with his firm truth-speaking, save in a few instances. There had been cases when the dealings of the doctor with his feminine patients had been indeed awe-inspiring. There was no doubt that he regarded all disease as being somewhat of the nature of moral delinquency, or at least as being closely connected with it. This somewhat severe idea was really the occasion of the optimism which was unexpectedly found to colour his otherwise grim appreciation of the misery amid which he found himself. Possibly he needed a strong imagination to support him under the burden of human woe. And his imagination was of the kind which extracts from desolating facts a reason and a cause, and which possesses an invincible faith in remedial application. Dr. Cornerstone could never persuade himself to accept evil when he saw it, or to pause on the indulgence of mere emotion. The sight of evil invigorated his will, stirred up his brain, and drove him on to that kind of beneficent action which is named hard thinking. After some particularly heart-rending experience among the wretched and forsaken of mankind, he would come home and sit with knit reflective brows, dreaming dreams and seeing prophetic visions, until at last he would shake off his depression in the startling declaration that old age and death themselves, those two unconquerable items of our fate, might, for all he knew, lie finally in the hands of the race, so magnificent a latent power to work out his own salvation did he discover enclosed within the brain and heart and will of man. On a soft, warm evening, a day or two after the minister's great entertainment, Dr. Cornerstone sat on the veranda of his house with his friend Carteret. The windows of the sitting-room were thrown open behind him, and every now and then a child or two stepped out, ran to play in the garden, and ran in again. There was an attraction in the sitting-room that called the little ones constantly back to itself. The mother sat there with her work, her soft movements, the snip of the scissors, the laying down of the reel, the rustle of material, the gentle voice speaking to the children, came through the open window to her husband's ear and accompanied his thoughts and conversation. The 10 years which had passed over Dr. Cornerstone's head had changed his brown hair to silver, his eyes were tenderer and more attentive than they had been, and his mouth a trifle firmer. Otherwise he was unaltered. Near the pair a laburnum hung its delicate, beautiful flowers. The trees were covered with fresh and beautiful green, and the sun turned the well-cut lawn into a carpet of gold. Around in the air the roar and jar of traffic was all too close, yet not so near but that the softest tone might be heard, and the pants of the children's breath from their little red mouths as they ran, and their light footfall in the race. "The age," Dr. Cornerstone was saying, "belongs to the common life that flows through our streets, and not to rank, riches, nor genius." "I am aware that we are destined to sit under the footstool of the mob, and hob and nob with the tramp," responded Carteret meekly. "When I see anyone adorning and yet more adorning his own life, and refining and yet more refining his own spirit, and comforting his spiritual imagination for this world and the next—" "You yearn to bundle him and his fads off this serious earth," interrupted Carteret with his usual dry air. "But when the virtuous recognizes his kin in the commonplace sinner, and the man of genius does not exalt himself against the fool, what then?" "There you are at your ineradicable individualism again," said Cornerstone testily. "Oh, take all the feathers out of all my caps." "A good brain is, in justice and right, a communal belonging. It owes rent to the community, just as the possessor of a good field, or a mine, or any other special advantage, owes rent to the rest to make the balance even." "This intrusive age," sighed Carteret. "It leaves us no privacy, nor any private property, not even our own heads." "Those least of all. The better furnished one head is, the less is there left for the rest." "I decline that," said Carteret. "I insist," returned Cornerstone. "There are limitations everywhere. If we use up the national capacity as a forcing bed for the few, we draw off mental power from the rest. The best individual brain falls off somewhere, so of the national brain. I seem to see—" "What?" "I seem to see each man of genius and capacity among us dogged in his steps by the pauper, the imbecile, and the rogue. I will say that the crime, imbecility, and degradation beneath stultify the refined product above. What national pride can we have so long as one degraded specimen is left to run like a rat to a hole at the tread of a policeman? Our symposium at Westminster is cancelled by our thieves' quarter, just as a city feast in November is cancelled by the hunger of the unemployed. In these things we are debtors. But how to get at the complacent consciences of the mentally endowed? Asked Carteret. Would that I could do it, returned the doctor. Would that I could bring your man of abnormal brain power into contact, genuine spiritual contact, with some of the broken and degraded, and say to him, there lies the blot to your personal civilization. This savagery shames your development. This noisome shadow dogs your advance and belongs to it. Wipe out that blot. Change these shadows. Cancel this shame, or your presence in our midst, and not theirs, is the worst of our national disgraces. The doctor stretched his arms out and got rid of the irritation of shirt cuffs, while he gazed at the setting sun. It burned slowly down through the trees opposite, and sent flames of colour up into the London sky. A child ran suddenly forward and leaned a round pair of arms upon its father's knees, looking up into his face silently and happily. Then it darted away to its play. Cornerstone. Carteret's voice was sad and musing. An unwonted depression had characterized him during this interview. The doctor turned and looked at his friend. When we have harried all the rogues off the face of the earth, and solved all our problems, the women we have always with us. Ah, I for one decline to speak of that difficult problem as an insoluble one. I will never allow that natural law is so stubbornly adjusted as to leave one half the race under a real permanent disadvantage. Of late an odd thing happened to me. Out with it. I went the other day to a great entertainment. I was present at Lady Shunland's the other evening. Poor strayed sheep, poor fish out of water. It was there the odd thing befell me. I saw there the most beautiful woman in England, or in Europe, for the matter of that. Said the doctor, with an uneasy frown. In my opinion, there's no beauty left, since— He broke off suddenly, and that with an eye of regret. Well, proceed. I saw her, and she exhibited toward me a certain favour. The deuce she did. The jade. That was your odd experience, eh? She held all the men at a distance. None might come near her, saving myself. I was the favoured one. I might sit by her side, with a fold of her dress over my knee. The Jezebel had heard of your book, Carteret. They'll take up with anybody when they fancy it increases their power. I found myself touched, Cornerstone. Devil take her! Pooh, did I swear? Don't let my wife hear. The doctor here cast a rather fearful glance toward the sitting-room, whence now came the gentle click of knitting needles. I was moved by her, Cornerstone, moved as I rarely am by a woman. I suspect them all, range myself against them all by instinct. With this one, on the contrary, I took sides against the world. The doctor shook his head. This is bad, Carteret, bad. You are advanced in life, but that makes the case worse. Change of scene might, however, be effectual. Ever since I saw those eyes of hers, I have been dreaming. Heavens and earth! What of? Of mortal ruin and despair. Ah, I see, I see. This is not a common case, no mere outbreak on the part of an elderly old fellow who ought to know better. Proceed. There was something in the eyes that went straight to my heart. I could believe that I had heard the cry of a lost soul. My bodily ear did not receive the words, yet they haunt my mind as though they had been spoken. I am lost beyond hope, but soothe my soul with one drop of human comfort before hell swallows me up forever." "Indeed, indeed." "I am tough enough, yet I cannot endure the memory of that woman's eyes." Poor soul! She was in the usual feminine predicament, sucked in by love and passion into some moral morass? I hardly think it. What then? There were certain indications that the case was peculiar. Well, her name? Her name. That is a thing of disgrace, a name to scald the tongue. Pretty company for you to be in. What name was it? A great name as the world goes. She answered to Lady Harriet. Ah, my prophetic soul! The doctor set both hands on the arms of his chair, leaned forward, and stared silently in Carteret's face. "Did you know of this thing, Cornerstone?" "It is far off now, the marriage, I mean. I have put it out of my head as much as possible, seeing that it was unalterable. I heard nothing from her since I received the long letter I told you of prior to her disappearance. A little more than a year afterward I read in the paper that she had married that revolting brute." "He was there with her." "Well, and she has made her discoveries?" The doctor was a little pale about the cheeks, and his jaw looked square and black and ugly. "She has found out something," returned Carteret. "Some more than ordinary experience has produced in her eyes a certain look of unfathomable sadness. I should call it more than sadness. Some sight she has seen, some shock she has received, has impressed itself permanently on her mind. Of this I feel sure." "Did you speak to her? Were you introduced?" "I was not introduced, yet we spoke together." "Anything of note?" "It was confidential. For once my withered hideousness was of service with a woman. She wanted me to sit by her and protect her from the nauseous assiduities of sexual admiration. Poor wretch, poor wretch! They educated her into sexuality until it is impossible for her to avoid exciting the corresponding sensuality in our coarser natures. With me, however, she was safe. She detected it by instinct. And how unerring have her instincts become on matters such as these! By me she sat contentedly, at rest." "How did you know it?" Something burned for a moment in the eyes and withered face of Carteret, something that was like a flame from a long repressed smoulder of pain at the centre of his being. But his voice in replying was commonplace and quiet. "Because," he said, "usually women cast a hasty glance at me and scuttle away. I am so accustomed to it, so prepared for the inevitable moment of repulsion, that the slightest variation appeals to me like a plain word. Lady Harriet's lovely eyes noted me and my deformity as I made room for her to reach a lounge, and as she seated herself she indicated by a look, by a movement of the hand, that the place beside her was vacant. That in itself was an event to a man such as I am. It was a greater when she did not withdraw the trespassing fold of her gown, nor shrink from me into the remotest corner." Dr. Cornerstone drew his handkerchief out and dried a drop or two that stood on his forehead. "You comprehend," he said, "that the inimitable Jessamine was the most precious of my patients." "Well, as I said, she spoke to me." "Yes?" A friend of mine mentioned the name of someone with whom she was once acquainted. That would be me. Just so. There is some tragedy behind, some weight on her mind. She found the occasion to send you a message. She whispered in my ear, "Tell him to call. Tell him to come. Beseech him. Pray him." The sun was edging slowly out of the sky. Nothing but a red half-disk remained. Dr. Cornerstone leaned back in his chair and stared at it. End of chapter 25.